Good afternoon. We're having some technical difficulties getting started tonight, but we are happy that we are on now. Again, I apologize. We had problems starting out, so I'm sure Jackie will be on shortly. Let me let her know so that we can get started. Running a little bit late. Let me get her on. Okay, we're back on. Again, I apologize. We were having some technical problems. We're not getting an internet connection. I'm located here in Atlanta, Georgia, and all kind of things happen. So I'm looking forward to Jackie joining us shortly, who is our co-host also. My name is Dr. Willie Miles. I'm the president of Dr. Willie Miles Children's Foundation, located here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm very excited that we're on tonight. We're on every Tuesday night with these kinds of conversations, For those who are first time joining us, I do want to share with you that we are an organization that place children as our priority. And we've been doing this for a while. And, I've gone throughout the country, of course, to see what other people have done for children, and people have done some awesome things. But I wanted to make sure that our organization was an organization that actually focused on children. So all of our dialogue on Tuesday nights deal with children issues and deals with hi Jackie, finally we're connected.
Hello, good evening.
Yeah, we're a little bit late, but guess what? We're gonna be good. We're good. We're good.
Here.
Yeah, I was basically giving an introduction to who we are and what we do. I do want to share that on tomorrow night, we do have a session for females only, and we discuss female issues. And this is how we came about with that females only Zoom meeting. We had these meetings, and parents were sharing with us that they had difficulty in talking to their children about a lot of things, especially sex. So we said, well, maybe what we should do is actually start training the parents first, right, Jackie? That's how we got this thing started.
And I wanted you to mention that tomorrow is for adults.
Yes, for adults. And on Thursday night, we have a session for men only. And of course, these are for adult men. So on tomorrow night, it's for women's only. On Thursday night, it's for men only. Then on Saturday, we have a youth Saturday. So starting at 1 o'clock, we meet with girls. It's called Girlfriends, part of the Mary Wilson Institute. And then at 2 o'clock, we have a session that's called Male Talk, and it's for teen males. So the youth sessions start on Saturdays, and the age is from 12 to 18 years of age. And parents, we're going to tell you this already now, that if you're concerned about the appropriateness of our conversations, you may want to not have your child come on. Now, we're very professional, but we simply tell the truth, and we call body parts the names. All right, so we don't talk about boys having sausage and all that kind of stuff. We talk about what it's called. So if you're uncomfortable with that, don't have your children come on.
Never heard that one, Dr. Miles. Never heard that one.
You heard
Never heard that one.
Yep. All right. So I do want to acknowledge, Jack, we've had these sessions this month, and I think we talked about it last week. It is Black History Month. And I kind of squirm at saying that because we should be doing this every day. But we should be proud that we're acknowledged at least by the greater society, at least once a year, which is a Black History Month. And during those months, we're real Black. I do want to say that
just a little bit blacker.
Just a little bit Black. I do want to say that for us who have a consciousness, we celebrate it every day because we're not just Black in Black History Month. We're Black every day of the year. And we should be proud of ourselves and our history and our ancestry for everything they've done to get us thus far.
And so much of what we do, obviously, when we focus on children, again, is about self-awareness.
Exactly.
So knowing who you are, and what I like is that we don't limit that to just children of color.
Exactly.
So it's for everyone, but it is important, and it should be equally recognized.
Albert and Penny, we missed y'all, so I'm glad you're finally on. All right. So Jackie, the conversation tonight is about contraceptives. And when we thought about this topic, the question was like, is it only for girls? The answer is no. It's this whole
if we're still having those conversations, Dr. Miles, then we have a lot of work to do.
Well, Jackie, guess what? Some parents don't even have that conversation.
So there's a lot of work to do.
And that's why our starting out is the conversation.
The conversation. The real conversation.
Right.
The birds and the bees.
Let's kind of back up a little bit to talk about how we are spending this almost this entire month. We have 4 weeks dealing with teen sexuality. And Jackie, what's very interesting? We look at our numbers. I'm just going to throw it out there.
Okay.
But for this series, our numbers have been very low as far as people signing on. And I was sharing with a colleague today. I said, these parents are not interested in this. But,
which again is the issue. And Dr. Miles, again, what I'm proud of, a lot of our issues are difficult for parents to embrace, for the general public to embrace, for children to embrace.
Right.
But that is the very reason that we're having these conversations, because we know that it impacts not just, their teen lives, but the rest of their lives.
Of course it does.
We have to do it.
So Jackie, let's sort of kick this off talking about just a conversation. And the conversation is very general. The conversation is, I'm talking about parents feeling comfortable to talk to their children, and the children feeling comfortable talking to them, not just about sexuality, but anything.
And then, and I was about to say the same thing, just those words, parents comfortable speaking to children, children comfortable speaking to parents. I want, people to think for a moment about the absence thereof, either way, and what happens if a parent's uncomfortable speaking to a child, if a child is uncomfortable speaking to a parent, because it should be just the opposite, Dr.
Exactly.
Miles. That's who you should be most comfortable speaking with, because that's who you should be able to trust most. So,
but it's amazing. It really is about relationships, though. And many of our families, they think they got it going on. We just love each other. I mean, love each other, but y'all ain't talking.
Right. You're not building
other.
Relationships. But Dr. Miles, a lot of people also have a difficult time seeing their children as individuals, as
That's correct.
People, as future adults.
They see them as children.
Who are going to go out there and live their life. They're not going to be Pookie forever,
But it's kind of interesting to me, though, how some parents are uncomfortable talking to their children. I would think, like you said, it'd be just the opposite. And we're not talking about friendships, right? We're not talking about becoming friends with your children.
We're talking about being a parent, being a guardian,
and having a relationship doesn't always mean punitive. Like, each time I talk to you, I'm telling you to do something, or you have not done something, or you're interrogating me. Are you with me?
And what's interesting? I think sometimes some parents expect the schools to have better relationships with their children, because some parents expect a lot of this to happen at the school. So what you're saying is, I expect the school to be more comfortable speaking to my child than I am.
Well, let's just set it clear. The school did not give birth to them. Let's make that very clear.
Nope, and the school is not keeping them. Let's set that
Exactly.
clear too. The school, they got them for a year at best.
When you talk about really, it is about abandoning responsibility. For my children, I am responsible for what they become. Now, at some point, they make choices, right? But I'm responsible for putting those things in them from the very beginning. Honesty and relationships, not
and
trusting
helping
everybody.
them make good choices.
Right, exactly. And so, if I'm responsible, one word you always use, and maybe two words, is intentional.
And deliberate.
Intentional. Now, folks, we're getting into this contraceptive soon. We're simply laying the foundation for it. That raising children should be deliberate. And so you should have some idea. Am I right, Jackie?
Honestly, I think that is the overall theme of all of our series, is that raising children needs to be intentional. And there's a lot to it. And too much of it has gone without being intentional, especially in certain communities. So, yeah.
Let's talk about, from our perspective, what this strategic is. And it's like, what kind of values do you want to share with your children that your family has? What do you all stand for, and what does you want to be when you grow up? And when
do you want to start
being
that
responsible?
Training? Yeah. When do parents start that training?
Right.
Because again, some people think you're going to start it at 15. You let the kids just kind of do whatever and float. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You want to have a conversation at 16. Guess what? Someone beat you to the punch.
Yeah, Dr. Bell, you're absolutely right. Parenting with a purpose. I like that. It is parenting with a purpose.
No, nobody. Hold on one second.
Because at the end of the day, your children are going to reflect you. If they go off course, guess what? Of course, all children go off course. They have minds. They begin to think. So they're going to think for themselves. But at least you know that you put it in them. That's the key.
And they usually come back to it at some point.
They may go astray. They may come back to it when they get 40, but they come back to it. They're coming back to it.
Yeah. And then, we talk often about the parents who put a lot of time and planning into other parts of their
Right.
life, very deliberate, long-term plans.
Right.
So we're just trying to encourage people to do the same with parenting.
But let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that that sets the foundation for the structure talking about contraceptives. For
Mhm.
instance, the question is, when do you start? Well, you start by talking about from a very early beginning, not about contraceptives, but about purpose, but
And
about purpose,
mhm.
and about what the child's goals are. And when you're doing that, you're establishing relationships, Jackie.
Right. Well, and also about, very, very early ages, we're using appropriate terms for body parts. And honestly, I think when we do that, the conversations are the most natural that they could be, because the child is not going to be shocked. This is something that's been a part of them since from the beginning.
Right.
Talking to you is not going to be unusual because they've been talking to you. So it
Exactly.
really makes all of these conversations that may get a little awkward as the kids get older, it makes it much more comfortable
Right.
and easier to engage.
Well, Jackie, I have to say hi to my son. He's waving at me. Hey, Leon, how are you? I hope you have a
Well, is
great
that what
live
that
stream
is?
also. So again, when parents say,
Hi, Leon.
when you start talking about contraceptives,
I
no,
know.
no, no. Intentional means you must have some outline. For instance, you're not talking to a 3-year-old about contraceptives. You're talking about a 3-year-old about being responsible. Yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
putting your toys back where you got them from,
Mm-hmm.
and no screaming, and a set of rules, in other
I
words.
was about to say consequences,
Yes,
because
exactly.
then consequences, come into the conversation when we start talking about contraceptives.
Jackie, how often have you ever said, like, I recall learning that in kindergarten.
Right?
I learned, when I was in elementary, I heard that before.
Well, they have a whole book. Everything I needed to know, I learned in kindergarten.
Exactly. So,
That's something for
parents,
parents to think about.
it starts very early. It starts
That's
very
very
early.
early.
Let's jump into this topic on contraceptives.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start out by saying, first of all, this is a big jump, Jackie. The first week, parents didn't even know their kids were having sex at 11. And we're talking about contraceptives.
Right. And the
So,
other thing that I think is out there about contraceptives, which I think is a really big problem, parents think if they're having this conversation, they're giving permission,
right,
or encouraging sexual activity. And that's something we really need to address.
right.
That's like telling your child, at 10 that they need a driver's license is giving them permission to drive a car. No,
Right.
it's not. It's just telling them that here are the things that are part of driving a car when you get to that age,
And
when it's appropriate.
the most important thing on a car is some insurance.
Right.
So if something happens.
Right. Another
So,
great analogy.
so
Yes.
your contraceptives is some insurance
Right.
before
And
they have
so
a
that's the
crash.
first thing
Yeah.
for parents to understand. This is not permission. If you're talking to your 9-year-old or your 10-year-old or your 12-year-old daughter, which and we have to admit to, a lot of this is around the female use of contraceptives.
Mm-hmm.
But so telling a 9-year-old what these things are, explaining them, is not saying, hey, I want you to go have sex and here's, how to not get pregnant. Because that's the other misnomer, that the whole sexual interaction is about pregnancy or not pregnancy.
Let's deal with this first of all. First of all, the kids ain't asking their parents to have sex, and they don't need their permission.
Right. And
They're
they're
doing
probably
it.
not going to tell you.
They're doing it anyway. And last week, I think our last week's discussion,
Anyway.
we talked about how old children are when they first start having the experience. And folk, when we start doing the research on this, we fell on the floor.
Yeah, we did.
You're talking about kids as young as 6 have already been introduced to porn. You're talking about at age 9 who've already engaged in oral sex.
Right.
I mean, so
and by 11, guess what? It's regular conversation amongst them and their friends.
Right. And if you're not intentional and you have already helped structure the conversation, parents, your children are headed for trouble. And the trouble is not the sex. The trouble is what comes as a result of it.
And the trouble is a lack of actual information
Right.
about what they're doing. And again, the consequences, they just don't know. That's when you can consider them children. Their knowledge of their behavior is just not there, especially if you're not providing it.
Well, the other thing is too, is it's a lack of knowledge of parents to actually to think that their children is still little Bubba and playing and playing with comic books.
Right.
Bubba has a different kind of comic books these days, which is called the internet.
Right.
So they have
and it's
access.
chock full of goodies.
Exactly. So
Um,
go on. I'm
yeah.
sorry. Go on.
No, I was going to say, we issued a challenge a few weeks back to see how many of our listeners were going to go ahead and start these conversations. So I would still be interested in seeing that in our chat to see, if anyone on our call has started to have conversations with their children, under 12, and maybe some feedback on what that was like.
Okay.
So as we continue.
We'll see. Oftentimes, the parents come to our live streams. Usually not the same ones every week.
Right,
So
right.
there are some that got the message. Great, we'll do it. But we're trying to encourage parents when we have a series to take the entire series because they're all
Mm-hmm.
connected. They're not disjointed. So like this month was our teen sex series,
Right.
teen prevention, and the whole point is that for 4 weeks we've been talking about this.
And the other thing that I want our parents to pick up on is that we're having the conversations so that they can become more comfortable with them
Exactly.
before speaking to your kids. I mean, you have a male and a female having these conversations. You can see there's no embarrassment. There's no, there's not an uncomfortable element because the conversations are just part of life.
Right.
But in these cases, they are so important for life.
Yeah.
To sustain life, to protect life.
Yeah, what I sort of want to do is sort of like go along a little script for us, and the script was really to talk about really the conversation, why we're not having conversation, and sort of connecting this live stream to our past 3, and then talk about the issue of contraceptives and who is it for. I mean, and we've agreed that it's for both boys and girls because it takes 2 to have babies, right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard of anybody getting gonorrhea by themselves. Are you with me?
I am.
And and parents, that's the reality of it. That's the reality of it. And let me just say that for 1 second. It is kind of sad that our children can't talk to the parents for fear, and parents can't talk to the children for fear. The child contracts something, had sex, unprotected.
No idea what to do.
Can't talk to them about it.
Possibly spreads it.
I mean, it's just parents.
Multiple partners.
Yep. If you don't do it for yourself, do it for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
For everybody else, develop the dialogue and the conversation with your children. Now, what's very interesting, what you don't want to hear is, oh, they won't talk to me. Well, no child's gonna be in my house that don't want to talk to me, because we're gonna have a conversation.
And guess what? Mm-hmm. Sometimes they can just listen. They're gonna pick up on your comfortable level. The fact that they're not, try not to be in a situation where you need them to give you that feedback to make you comfortable. Just keep an open dialogue and they will eventually interact with you.
And sometimes you can just listen.
Mm-hmm.
You have to always be the talker, because our kids have a lot of information. Oftentimes our children want to talk to us and we should guide the conversation. We don't have to always lead it, because we don't, we found out last week, the kids say, my mom and dad talked to me about the birds and the bees. They had it all wrong. But the parents had it wrong.
And listen, especially based on what these kids are doing now, experiencing now, hearing from their peers. So yeah, they can very often think you have it wrong because they had another authority who got to the table before you did.
Part of the parents being intentional is we're going to talk about contraceptives when it's appropriate. We're going to talk about it, and because we're talking about it doesn't mean that I'm saying you can go and do it. We're talking about it because as a parent, I love you, and as a parent, I want to protect you, and as a parent, I want to make sure that you have all the information, so you don't have to depend upon the gang members, or you have to depend upon the people on the street or the street committee to give you information that as a parent, I should be giving you.
It's my responsibility. It's my duty.
Right. And so as I give it to you now, you don't have to take it, but you got to bear the consequences of it. Right. And Jackie, that's why I love this series we have, because we talked about puberty, the things about puberty, how all this leads up to tonight's conversation. Yes. The last 3 weeks have led up to this night's conversation. Contraceptives. But what I find, Jackie.
Excuse me one moment. You guys can hear my puppy in the back. I'm going to go and remove him.
All right. What's kind of amazing to me is that we know and we suspect what our children may be doing on all ends. Sometimes we choose not to address it because of lack of comfort. But it's so important that parents talk to their children about contraceptives. And oftentimes, they only want to have the conversation with the girls. They only want to have the conversation with the girls. It's amazing that there are about about 10 different contraceptives for girls. You know, like the birth control patch, the birth control pill, birth control shot, cervical cap. You all know the routine. And there are about 3 for boys. And for boys, it's going to be condoms, withdrawal, and then ready for this one, the sex education. We're supposed to do a whole lot of talking to our boys about this sex thing and about to use condoms. Let me share with you what I told my sons. I told my sons, Jackie, I don't have to teach you about pregnancy prevention.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna tell you how much child support is a month.
That works.
I'm gonna talk to you about child support. I'm gonna talk
Mm-hmm.
about how much it costs you to raise a child a year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna talk about how much college costs
Mm-hmm.
and daycare costs. Now,
Mm-hmm.
so if you want to go out there and do all that stuff, don't say I didn't tell you.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
let's talk about the fact that the child has no care or concern for what your problems may be.
right, because we're not talking about trying to make our kids fearful. Because one thing we talked about over the last 4 weeks, folks, is that when you create fear in your children, you're going to create anxiety and some dysfunctions. You do not want to create anxiety. It's about, oh, don't do that because it'll make you go blind. Don't do that because your wiener gets smaller. Don't do that. It's just all
You know
kinds
what? And it's all about honesty and integrity. Give your children accurate and real information. But
so important.
my tagline is make sure you have it yourself. I'm
But
about the resources. Do some.
most
I
important.
mean, a lot of adults have misconceptions because there's never really been a process. They probably didn't have parents who were comfortable. Maybe they learned incorrectly. So let's go ahead and use the resources that are available. And speaking of that, Dr. Mouse, you want to go ahead and jump into our research?
Yep. Good news. The research shows that more teens, parents get over it, they're having sex. More teens are using condoms.
Mm-hmm.
More teens are using condoms. And if they're not using condoms, they're more informed about it. They're more informed about it. Really important. Now, I'm going to jump quickly, Jackie, if I can, if you don't tell me not to. I'm going to jump quickly into the repeat births.
Right.
Okay.
Very important.
Yeah. No, you're going up the line.
Okay. Because we want people to know that while teens are using contraceptives more, we have to keep in mind the numbers were really high. But among those who are having children, repeat births is extremely common. For instance, out of 66,800 repeat births, 57,200 had 2 kids. Okay.
Say that. So you're telling me that I'll repeat births, the repeat births as a result of not using contraceptives, and these are teens. This is not 21-year-old, right?
No, these are teens.
These are people like under
These are 15 to 19.
Wow. So you're
Right.
telling me
So
that
at 19, that means you're having a second child.
wow. And I
A
think we all
second
know
child.
somebody
And
like
then
that.
of that, Dr. Miles, I'm not done. 8,400 are having a third child. And then you have 1,200, which may not seem like a big number, but that 1,200 is having a 4th child or more.
Jackie, you go too fast. You're putting us in trauma. I mean, the point is that you gotta let this stuff marinate. So go
I
back over
understand.
again a little bit slower. This is amazing to me.
It is amazing. But actually, Dr. Miles, when you think about it, we've actually seen this. So
Yeah.
I really was not surprised about the numbers. Very often, after that first child, a lot of them feel like, what's the difference? Right? And that sometimes having a second child is looked at an opportunity to get government support.
But but I think, Jackie, also we gotta be careful. You know why? Because oftentimes parents encourage that stuff and they don't much know it. Oh, I love my first little grandchild. Aren't they cute? And I'll take care of them.
Well, Dr. Miles, we're going to talk about encouraging it. Let's not talk about the TV shows and how we throw these elaborate baby showers. We really do kind of make it look glamorous. But what a lot of children don't realize is that when that baby shower is over, when that TV show and that camera is off, or even if you have one
Real
after
life.
that big, beautiful party, there's a human being, right? Who is with
Real
you
life.
24/7, right? Who is not going to necessarily sleep through the night, who needs to eat 3 to 4 times a day, who needs clothes, diapers, everything. So we really have to be careful when we promote that. And you're right. Sometimes we do actually, promote teen pregnancy unknowingly, because it's, we say, okay, well, afterwards, let's go ahead and support it. And of course, we're not advocating that be mean or in
Mm-hmm.
any way harmful, but we are asking to keep it real. We have to let these young people know that they put themselves in some situations. Life is by no means over, as Dr. Miles mentioned. You don't want to scare them, but you want to give them facts about what it means.
And the information we're getting, we're not judging people. We're not judging. We're giving you information because we know things happen.
Right.
Mistakes happen one time. After the second time, it's a decision.
Right. And so again, we want to emphasize that providing
Okay, you're off. I can't hear you.
increased. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Providing contraception to adolescents does not, I'm going to say that again, does not result in increased rates of sexual activity. They don't go, oh, I can't get pregnant, I'm going to go ahead and have, be more sexually active.
Hey, before you go on, let me jump in with this. The sexually active students who use condoms, ninth graders. It starts out with more boys are using condoms than girls using contraceptives. 10th grade, the number of boys drop down. More girls use contraceptives, less boys use condoms. 11th grade, the less boys use condoms, more girls use contraceptives. And then by the 12th grade, of course, really a few boys are using the condoms and more girls are using the contraceptives.
Because I think at that point, they've kind of learned something on their own. Girls know that you carry the child. I mean, you're going to carry the child, and boys know that very often they can avoid responsibility even after the child arrives.
But not only that, but also I think they began to learn that having children is a responsibility that really can slow your life down. It can slow your life down to almost a halt. Because you find yourself being a teen parent, and we're talking about abstinence. We were talking about convincing children to wait to have sex, and if they do, they need to understand the consequences of it. Consequences are parents having to take care of the child. Consequences are if you're going to go to college, they have to leave your child. What impact does this have on the child? Oh, grandma can raise them. Well, Jack, it works sometimes, sometimes it doesn't. But I began to see those children in therapy who parents have left them. And so they begin to have all kind of attachment issues.
And we've seen situations, Dr. Miles, where when those things happen, children are very unclear about their parents. There are situations where, probably not intentionally, but the parent is actually confused. We've seen people be raised as siblings. Yeah,
but all the research shows that there is an open communication with parents. It decreases the likelihood of early sex.
And engaging in a sex, unsafe sex as well.
Right.
Okay. Let's see. We have contraception for girls. 44% rely on the pill. And again, these start at various ages. There's also a birth control patch. There's a birth control ring. There's a birth control shot. They have a lot more things now than before. The cervical cap, diaphragms, emergency contraceptive. That's a relatively new product. Implantable contraceptions, IUDs, fertility awareness, and then of course spermicide. I mean, the point here is that there are so many options to explore that there should really never be a need for an unwanted pregnancy just from early sexual activity.
And that's where the conversation has to be had with both girls and boys. Because I think that boys need to know also what girls go through just to be with them. Well, first of all, we're not advocating they should be with them, but they're going to do it anyway. But my point is that boys should know about all the contraceptives for girls so that they can say, listen, what are you on? Well, first of all, we're hoping they're not doing anything, but if they are going to do it, like, what are you on?
And to that extent, Dr. Miles, when you talk about family units, boys have siblings, they have mothers, they have aunts, they have cousins, so they should know. And likewise, girls should know uh, the options for men as well.
We ain't got but three. But let me let me share with the parents. Jackie always want to. She always want to issue a challenge to somebody. She always. I don't know what she's watching. She always want to issue a
Because
challenge.
I want the audience to
So
engage.
so I want to issue a challenge. I like for parents who have boys to go and ask the boys to name a contraceptive for girls.
Good one. Good one.
Now we got like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We got
Guess what?
13.
Don't let them use the pill. Take the pill out.
Right,
They
right.
don't know about that. Birth
They have
control
13 they can choose from. Just ask the boys, like, how many contraceptives are there for girls? Can you name any? First of all, he gonna say, what's a contraceptive? Now, and for the girls, if you ask them, they're gonna say immediately condoms.
pill. Yeah, those are very common. I don't know if they're still giving them out in schools, but they are pretty common.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. You know, there was a problem with that, and I'm just trying to figure out. Did we just do some research to say that kids are seeing porn at age 6, and they're having oral sex by 9?
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the issue with this?
Giving them a condom.
Condoms.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. So just a thought.
Another deep, engaging concept, American concept, actually. So
You know, Jackie, one thing we didn't cover though, because we're naturally assuming that when boys have used condoms, they're having sex with girls, but it also is an issue with teen males who have sex with males. Right? And so parents, when you're having the conversation, you really gotta be open-minded. If you say like, okay, every time you have sex, you need to have sex with the girl, put on a condom. He says, well, guess what? I ain't had sex with a girl, so I guess I ain't got to put them on. Right. Check Dr. Bell has something else. She says, research also indicates that early sex is a quest for intimacy that is lacking in the family. And we covered that last week, didn't we?
We did. I was about to say
very
that's
much
come
so.
up in a couple of our conversations.
Right.
And that's just a statement of fact, because we discussed that when children have relationships with members of their family, that's not a void that they're trying to fill outside of that.
Right.
So again, while we're talking about early engaging in sexual activity, we're still talking about something that really, not the sexual activity, but those needs should be met at home through the very relationships and conversations we're talking about. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. First of all, you did not create this word, so I'm gonna stop saying it's your word. It's not your word.
It is my word.
It is not your word. So the point is that
intentional.
Even the conversation on contraceptives should be intentional. You all know what you want to talk about.
All parenting should be intentional.
I'm not talking about going from the cuff like, let me tell you about contraceptives. Put the condom on. No, I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about even a little outline. I want to talk about why it's important. I want to tell you about what's going to happen if you don't use it. I'm going to give you the number of resources you can use. And I'm going to ask you, do you want me to provide condoms for you? Or do you think you need birth control? And tell them, it's not an admission of guilt because you say yes.
Nor do you have to go out and engage if you say yes. You still have the choice to refrain, but you just have this option of protecting yourself.
Isn't that wonderful, though, to have that kind of conversation with your child versus, Mom, can I be on birth control? Who you sleeping with? I knew you a fast-tailed girl. You know, just attacking the girl. All she did was try to ask you, Mom, listen, I'm just asking. Because I'm sorry, go on.
Right, and I was going to say, we mentioned males having sex with males, of course, and the use of condoms. But when it comes to transmitting sexually transmitted diseases, you also have to discuss girls having sex with girls.
Almost certainly.
Okay, and the type of contraception that is out there to address that.
As we were doing the research on this, the question was asked, if a female uses a female condom, should the boy also use a condom? And the answer to that is no, because you're defeating your purpose. And so, Jack, as I'm talking to you, it's kind of amazing. I'm putting myself in the father's place, and I'm talking as you were a child. I don't feel any discomfort.
No, well, I mean,
I feel like I'm educating them.
Right. Well, you are educating them. And as I heard you discuss those two things, it reminded me of some workshops that, we did in the school district. So I want parents to know that those workshops are also out there, probably in your school district. Very often they ask if the parents will give permission for the children to participate in these conversations. I do know they start in elementary school. So we want the parents to look out for that. And again, not being shy and, squeamish. Allow the children to have the conversations. They tell you the date it's going to happen, and then you make sure you follow it up that evening. Parents have got to stop hiding around the corner when it comes to conversations on sex and on safe sex.
As somebody said, I think one of y'all presidents said this here, read my lips. Your children looking at porn at age 6.
Well, that's what happens when you put an uncensored computer in the palm of their hand and they walk around with it 24 hours a day.
Well, I got to do a comeback on with this, Jen, because some parents ain't putting it in their hands. They can get this up anywhere. What I'm finding out is that when parents have the phones for their kids and take the phone from them, the kid has a friend.
Well, I was about to say, of course.
It was so amazing. Yeah. These kids know how to access this stuff.
Yeah, because actually mine was exposed through a friend.
And that's why the conversation is so critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Let's see. Of those teens who said they were sexually active, 78% of females and 85% of males said they employed some form of contraception during their first sexual experience. Okay. Now, what I think is key there is first sexual experience. And it makes sense. You're scared. You've heard something about it. And so it's your first time you use it. I think, where we have to continue conversations is that as they become and as they engage more, then perhaps a certain comfort level comes in and they're not using the contraceptives as much.
You know, I like to see, Jackie, I like to see parents knowing their children. And knowing their children simply means that I can sort of like pinpoint when it's time to really, to dive into it. Like, for instance, if it's 8 years old, if it's 9 years old, we're going to have a serious conversation. And not serious like you're in trouble, but because the child can be squirmish by you talking about it in the first place. But you have to make them comfortable by saying, it's okay. It's part of human life. It's part of life. We're going to talk about some things because I want you to be informed. I don't want you to be stupid. I want you to be informed so that when you start hearing kids talk about the stork brings the baby, you'll say, that's not true.
And I think, Dr. Miles, that we can also use the term empowered.
Yes.
We want our young men and our young women to be empowered with this knowledge so that they're making a conscious decision as to whether or not this is important for me right now. Right.
And again, we're talking about this. We said this before, that it's not just a female conversation. It's a conversation for the male children, and a conversation for the female children. And as we're broadcasting, I said, I wonder how this would work. I wonder if I could bring my daughter in and my son in, and we just talk about this, because they both need to hear about both. They need to hear about what boys use, what girls use, things girls go through, things boys go through. And so it doesn't have to be such a reclusive, like, it's only for girls. Because guess what? It ain't just for girls.
Right. And Dr. Miles, I'm gonna give parents a little leeway here and say, hey, however you do it, if you feel like you want to talk to your sons
just
on the side, get started. But I very much agree, at some point, raising siblings or raising, a male and a female child, that some point they really should not only be able to have the conversation together, but feel comfortable enough to have the conversation with each other. Because having raised a son and a daughter, I can tell you there are times, and have been times, when they had, their own communication system, and they would talk about things perhaps that they wouldn't share with me. And they certainly have other culturally shared experiences that I'm not familiar with. So
as we sit here, again, I don't want to belabor the point, but as we sit here, I'm sitting here saying, I understand me. I'm comfortable with it. You're comfortable with it. Why are parents so uncomfortable? Why are parents uncomfortable? Is it because of their own experiences? Is it because of their lack of knowledge? Is it because they don't think the kids will listen to them? Is it because they have not practiced what they are telling the child?
And Dr. Miles, we have a lot of people, a lot of parents still have parents, so the children's grandparents, who were born 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, when having conversations about sex with your child was very taboo. I mean, honestly, I think it's probably in the well, not the 20s, but within the last 10 years or so that, these kind of conversations are possible. So my point is that we have a lot of parents out there whose parents never spoke to them about this, and they really just don't know how. So
You know,
again, I think
yeah.
part of our role is that we're putting it out there. We're practicing tonight. You guys are hearing us say some things, and hopefully you'll take some of this and you'll go back and you'll speak to your kids because you've seen someone do it. So if your parents didn't do it, consider us your parents. Now we've done it.
It's interesting. Faithful Father's on, and he said that I remember when we had sex education classes, and guess what? I recall that too. But there was such an uproar about it. There was such an uproar, and they took it out of the schools.
Amazing. Well, I think there's more political reasons behind that. And Faithful Father did just say too, right, a lot of grandparents are raising these kids. And think about it, Dr. Miles, they're not about to have this conversation.
No, they're not.
Probably
No.
They didn't have this conversation with the kids' parents, which may have led to.
Let me tell you why they're not having it. They're not having it because they saying that if you do this, you're going to hell. See, and that's when we start bringing this religion into the sex thing.
Well, you just provided a wonderful segue, Dr. Miles. What is the role of the church in?
Well, I ain't going there. I'm not going there. You're not getting me in that conversation. I'm not touching that one.
Role
I am not
educating
touching that
and protecting our youth.
Because also it's sin. And I said the reason it's sin because you can't do it no more. So the whole point is that when we start getting older, we start condemning everything.
Okay. And now you're crossing over. Just stop. Just stop. Okay. Healthy relationships happen our whole lives. But that's what we're trying to get to, is that these things are part of healthy relationships, living a healthy and balanced life. And we want it to be something that you pass on to your children. If your parents didn't give it to you, by all means, break that cycle and give your children healthy balance.
I have to go back because see, Faithful Father trying to cheer me on. I'm thinking again, Grandma don't want to talk about it because she thought about her own experiences when she was young.
Dr. Miles.
I'm telling you seriously. And see, I find that oftentimes people tell kids, you shouldn't. I said, the reason you say you should, because you can't. But see, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. I know the grandparents we have. Also, some of our grandparents 25, 30, at least. So grandparents ain't as old as they used to be.
Insane, but yes, this is also true. This is also true. And again, we have these cycles in our family, that really are not always very good for us. So again, our goal with anyone listening, and then we hope those listening go back and take it, spread it to at least one other person. Tell you what, here's my new challenge. Ask another parent if they've had conversations with their children. Just go, oh, by the way, I'm going to check. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I will check with some of my friends. Now, most of their kids are old, but I'm going to ask them anyway, and I will let you guys know next week. Did you have those conversations? Are they ongoing conversations with your children about sexual health and wellness?
Okay, we're going to talk about, I'm going to throw something out to you that I thought, I didn't know about this today, and I found out, of course, it talks about, it's LARC, intrauterine devices, and it talks about that many parents don't think that their youth are old enough to have it. Are you ready for this? It's showing that it's safe for females. It's safe.
Yep.
And I got to tell you this part, I thought was kind of interesting. I said, what's going on in Colorado? But Colorado has the highest use of them for teens.
And this was back in 2013. So
I know what's happening in Colorado, but something is happening with teens there. But the point is that, sometimes we're afraid of taking a look at these things. We say, first of all, we don't want to do anything to harm our children. We don't want to, we're encouraging them to do this stuff. And I have to deal with my own consciousness. Well, my own consciousness says that I'd hate to have my daughter be 12 years old and pregnant. And I have some choices, of course. There are plenty of choices. And
because
many people they're choosing
subject.
Abortions and whatever else is out there. But I'm saying that why go through all that when you've talked about it and you let her know the consequences? And then if she does it, then it ain't like, what did I do wrong? For the boys, making them feeling just as socially responsible when they are when they cause a teen pregnancy. They're
we
just
can do an entire
as responsible.
session on male accountability and how we're raising our sons.
Right.
I do want to go back to the devices and the
Mm-hmm.
implants that you mentioned. And I think one of the benefits, Dr. Miles, is that those are there and they remove that in the moment decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're already there. It's not the responsibility of a daily pill, which a lot of young and older women don't maintain the way they do. So you can be on the pill, miss it, and still get pregnant. But when you have those intrauterine devices,
Mm-hmm.
again, you don't have to think about it at that time. It's already there. You're certainly not going to, remove it at that time. So I think that may be why they're becoming a more popular choice.
You know what it is? I think having parents to talk about it, they're feeling uncomfortable, but not to talk about it is being irresponsible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To not talk to your children about this and being intentional about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, see, think about it. Parents, don't get it twisted. You ain't trying to tell them what you did, and are they business what you did?
Mm-hmm.
What you're trying to do is get them current information to ensure they're not ill-informed.
Dr. Miles, honestly, for me, it is no different than any other protective measure that you take for your children.
Let's try
You
this,
tell
Jackie.
your children about
Go on.
laws
Go on.
because you don't want them to go out there and end up incarcerated. You
Don't talk
tell
to
them
strangers.
about, drugs and that are harmful.
Don't talk to...
How is this different? How
It's
can you
different.
leave this out?
It's different. We said this 2 weeks ago. It is different because they'll tell the child about every part of their body except the one that can reproduce.
Mm.
They'll talk about every other part of the body who can't do different. Don't hit nobody. Keep your hands to yourself. Keep your hands wrapped to yourself. Oh, watch your mouth. Watch your mouth. Watch your mouth. Oh, watch what you hear. Oh, let's get down to your legs. Let's watch where you walk. Well, wait a minute. Let's go up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. But we're not teaching them about their bodies, how they function, and also about the desire for intimacy with someone else.
Right.
Because there's another side to that. There are some teens who are actively dating and perhaps in love and feel that they're ready. There's so many sides to sexual activity. They're not all, very early, irresponsible, dangerous. What about when they're seeking intimacy in the right way? All of that comes from conversations and understanding what that means.
And at the end of the day, Jackie, guess what? This is all just human conversation. It's just conversation.
It is.
It's just conversation. Jackie, I want to tell you something. I want, in these meetings we have, you be talking too much. You be talking because the time goes on so quickly.
And you always blame me.
You be talking, you be elaborating too much.
Sorry.
The point is that we have 4 more minutes. 4 more minutes. Well, really 2 more minutes. So let's kind of like, somebody says we got to start from the kindergarten level. You have to properly, who is that somebody? It's faithful father. You have to properly educate the parents. They never learned sex education. So you're asking them to be adults when they're still in kindergarten. Got you.
And also, what that made me think of is the PTA meetings that are very often wasteful. I mean, these are some topics that you can break into sessions, especially now that you're virtual. You can go into different rooms and start talking about, again, what's appropriate.
Okay, that sounds ideal. I'm going to let this go. We got 3 more minutes. But they ain't going to PTA meetings, first of all.
Well, that's
not even virtual.
Fault.
They fuss about the kids not being in virtual class, but they will even attend a virtual. Okay, this is not to attack parents. It's just my point.
That's another workshop. I have a whole series on that. So that's another conversation.
Parents, your children need you. Parents, your children need you. And decide upon topics you're going to talk to your children about, like how appropriate dating, do a plan, appropriate relationships, intentional, caring for your body, intentional.
And can I throw this in?
Sure.
Ask your children questions. Find out where their heads are. Ask them, if they have any idea of what age they may plan to be, intimate, or that they think is appropriate for intimacy. Mm-hmm. Ask them, how they feel about intimacy outside of marriage. You never know. Find out what their thoughts are, and then you can better assist them and guide them.
All I'm going to say, parents, is just prepare yourself for the responses. Our children are more mature than we, and well, they're not more mature and going to school on time, but in those
Mhm.
other areas, they're very mature
Mhm.
and they
There
have
was another,
information.
right. There
They
was
have it.
there's a lot of good facts, points in our chat about how we're kind of starting this thing over every generation, and it's
Yeah.
true. It's like it's never come up before. Kids going through the same things, and I just want to give an example how we attacked smoking cigarettes, and we were able to reduce it.
Hmm.
Right. So we need to do the same thing with this. Equally life threatening.
Okay. I think you're frozen.
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. There you go. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, I had finished my point that we talk about other things that sexuality is equally dangerous, and so we need to just again come out of the box or come out of our fears and
Okay.
make sure that we're speaking with our children.
We're about to wrap up. Have 1 minute. I want to say this right here. This is our Jackie. This is our last night to talk about this teen sex series.
It is.
We had 4 weeks of this. We started in January. We had
Okay.
4 weeks. So I want to offer this to our followers. If you have a topic you'd like for us to talk about in the next 2 weeks, please inbox us. Any
Mm-hmm.
topic you like, and we'd be more than happy to discuss it. And it has to be relevant to you and your children. All right.
I
So
did see something about a virtual conference, Dr. Miles. I think we should consider that.
I saw Faithful Father say that, and we'll consider it. Yeah, we'll consider it. But we'll do it in partnership with maybe the department. We'll need some partnerships to do these kinds of things. But I do want to say tomorrow night, folk, people tune in. Women discussion on Saturday. I try to be brief. The men said, let's have a conversation with the men and the women together. I gotta go, y'all. It is
But
8
another
o'clock.
separate section first.
See ya.
2 weeks.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.